Thank you, my dear friend. Thank you, Ambassador, for that advertisement of my country. My fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to join the discussion with this distinguished group of panelists to examine the trajectory of HIV and AIDS beyond 2015. Indeed, my fellow panelists have identified most of the elements in the topic allocated to me, and that is key messages that need to be injected into the SIDS meeting in September. It requires a focus on small island developing states, SIDS, most of which experience the same socio-economic challenges of developing states, most times created in the developing world, but with much greater intensity, ranging from global financial crisis to climate change, and with less resources and capacity. Whether in the far yonder Caribbean or in the Indian Ocean or the nearby Pacific, SIDS suffer special vulnerabilities that need to be specifically addressed. And this is aptly captured in the Caribbean Human Development Report for 2012, which has been named Human Development and the Shift to Better Citizen Security, published by the UNDP, for which we give special acknowledgement to one of our own panelists here, Helen Clark. The argument in that document is framed by a philosophical axiom by the late Sir Arthur Lewis, the renowned Caribbean scholar from St. Lucia and a Nobel laureate in economics. Back in 1955, he wrote the following, I quote, "The advantage of economic growth is not that wealth increases happiness, but that it increases the range of choice," end of quote. Amartya Sen, the Indian development economist and Nobel laureate as well, he was later to endorse this view of human development, and I quote, "as the enlargement of people's freedom to lead the lives they value," end of quote. But he expanded even further by enunciating that the human development approach is motivationally committed to concentrating on what remains undone, what demands most attention in the contemporary world, from poverty and deprivation to inequality and insecurity. And so this afternoon, I want to submit that there is a connectivity between the human development aspirations of these development economists and the refrain for ending AIDS pronounced by leading advocates. I want to reference two of these in particular. Firstly, Jim Young Kim, the president of the World Bank, who in addressing the 2012 International AIDS Society Conference in Washington, D.C., called for harnessing the moral power and practical lessons that the AIDS movement has produced to speed up progress against another scourge, poverty. This view, no doubt, reflects the fact that the course of the AIDS epidemic was changed by intervening social and structural factors. At this very conference, I make reference to the second advocate, and he is Michel Sibidi, UNAIDS Executive Director, who in his presentation to the opening session under the theme, The Last Climb, emphasized that revolutionizing the AIDS response means leaving no one behind. And this can only happen if we conceptualize and implement programs shifting from a short-run emergency response to a long-term sustainability response with an emphasis on social justice. This shift must address the key determinants of vulnerability in order to change the trajectory of AIDS. In this regard, I am struck by the emerging work led by UNAIDS in collaboration with the World Bank and other collaborating partners to simultaneously address extreme poverty and AIDS. And in so doing, it links poverty and HIV risks. Poverty expressed in terms of financial inability to meet daily needs and physical isolation from economic and social opportunities manifests itself in inability to meet educational expenses, to meet food insecurity, lack of spending on and physical access to health care. The outcome from these causal pathways of poverty is lack of schooling, schoolgirl and boy relationships with what we call the sugar daddy, parents engaging in transactional sex, other untreated diseases, higher viral load for HIV positives, and increasing transmissibility. All of these impact on our human development. And so I believe that the blend between these comprehensive philosophical and policy prescriptions provides useful guidelines for the key messages for the SIDS Accelerated Modalities for Action pathway, in other words, the Samoa pathway, to emerge from the SIDS conference in September of this year. In fact, the similarity between the draft outcome document of the SIDS conference and the 17 goals emerging from UN Open Working Group on post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals is very striking, most striking indeed, in that they both identify goals and targets related to eradicating poverty, promoting sustainable patterns of consumption and production, and managing the natural resource base of economic and social development as essential requirements of sustainable development. But, ladies and gentlemen, given the nature of small states within the overarching global context, the SIDS document focuses more specifically on equitable economic growth, sustainable tourism, climate change, sustainable energy, disaster risk reduction, the management of chemicals and waste, in particular hazardous waste, gender equity, social development, culture and sport, and the promotion of peaceful societies and safe communities. It also includes health and NCDs, and does inadequately, and I emphasize, it does inadequately reference HIV together with malaria, TB, and neglected diseases, mainly in relation to universal access to prevention, care, and support. All these elements in the proposed Samoa Declaration in the final analysis address sustainability as a pathway to human development. And so it is therefore in connection with the shortcomings on HIV and AIDS in the emerging Samoa Declaration that I use this particular intervention today to promote 6 key messages for you. The first message is consolidate the alliance to jointly eliminate poverty and HIV. And emerging from this alliance are 3 complementary elements that SIDS must take into consideration. They include the following. 1, aligning health and development efforts around country-led time-bound goals towards ending extreme poverty and AIDS. 2, identifying targets for ending AIDS alongside the goal of universal health. 3, promoting national, regional, and global monitoring and implementation research as critical components of sound policy making. The second message is create viable partnerships aimed at sustainable development. Sustainable development of small island development states, the theme of the conference. It can be achieved through international cooperation and partnerships of various kinds. In the case of our own Caribbean region, this is not only limited to North-South relations, but also it embraces South-South cooperation. And we have seen this in the relationship between Brazil and the smaller countries of the Caribbean region with regard to the antiretrovirals for people who are living with HIV/AIDS. And also, we have seen this with the Caribbean community and the African Union on shared responsibility with support of the UN/AIDS. My third lesson is sustain and reconfigure the unfinished MDGs within the post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals. The progress in attaining the international targets in the MDGs among SIDS shows marked improvement over the past decade. However, the recently released gap analysis undertaken by UN/AIDS demonstrates, at least for the Caribbean region, the need for more robust financing models based on shared responsibility, accelerated and affordable treatment regimes, and accenting the elimination of HIV-related stigma and discrimination to arrest the economic regression that will occur if the gains are not sustained and accelerated in the post-2015 era. The UN General Assembly special event in September 2013 toward achieving the MDGs, in which I had an opportunity to participate, that provided a very clear consensus around the intrinsic links between poverty eradication and promotion of sustainable development. My fourth message is move beyond the MDGs with resolve to end AIDS. And I submit that the rapid scale-up of HIV treatment remains one of the most inspiring achievements in global health history. In fact, I want to share with you that since 2001, the number of people receiving HIV treatment in low and middle income countries has risen from a mere handful to more than 12 million in early 2014. These advances, they are saving lives, lives of real people, with the number of AIDS-related deaths falling by 30% from 2005 to 2012 worldwide. They are also preventing new infections with antiretroviral therapy, demonstrating the greatest prevention benefit of any biomedical prevention tool studied to date in randomized controlled trials. My fifth message is adopt a holistic approach to post-2015 global health, applying the lessons learned from the AIDS response. And out of time, my sixth one I leave with you is make justice for all a fundamental requirement for getting to zero discrimination as the ultimate of human development. And I mention this mainly because we in the Caribbean have identified the elements of justice for all as our overarching inclusive strategy. The program, coordinated by PANCAP in collaboration with national governments and UN/AIDS, involved parliamentarians, faith leaders, youth, civil society, and private sector. And while recently CARICOM Heads of Government Conference deferred the Justice for All Declaration to make provision for more national consultations, it did approve, I emphasize, it did approve the mechanisms proposed by PANCAP for taking forward the agenda designed to eliminate HIV-related stigma and discrimination. I want to conclude by saying that we in the Caribbean, we recognize this intractable challenge of getting to zero discrimination. And it is not only in the Caribbean that this is a challenge, it is a global challenge as well. These messages are by no means inclusive, I want to emphasize. They at least point in the direction of highlighting those issues of human development which the HIV movement has illustrated through the discussions at these biannual conferences. They have truly sensitized us to the phenomenal progress that has been made since these gatherings began in Atlanta in 1980. I want to join the expressions of sadness and the sense of loss of our colleagues who perished in Malaysia A17. Let us immortalize their work and their commitment to the fight against HIV and AIDS by continuing their research, their community outreach, their advocacy and activism around the themes and ideals that have reverberated throughout this meeting. I applaud the President and the members of this 20th IAC organizing group for ensuring that these issues are so adequately captured in the Melbourne Declaration. Let it therefore be our clarion call, resonating at SIDS, at the UN General Assembly, in every region and every country. Let us acknowledge that we have made much progress, but AIDS is far from over. Let us continue to advocate for AIDS to be retained in the post-2015 development agenda, and let us harness resources and foster international solidarity to crack the intractable barriers. Let us resolve to end AIDS by 2030. Thank you.